And do live.
Good morning, Summa Scholars. Today is March 11th, the first week of Lent. Good morning, Joe.
Good morning.
It is the first week of Lent, Joe. You may think by how you feel, if you're like me, that it's the fifth week. I don't know, sixth. I don't know how long this thing goes. Yeah, how you doing this Lent so far?
Definitely feeling it. That time change really has messed with me, I think.
Yeah, it's the first time I've experienced this in years.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm really not a fan.
Yeah, this morning waking up was not super easy.
That's my big political radicalism is getting rid of this thing. I don't really care what else happens, you know.
Really? You don't care if the government crumbles and Hamas takes over
Nope, don't care. Just get rid
Sharia
of the
law?
let's just stop the daylight savings thing. This is I don't want to say a naughty word for it, but I won't. Anyway, what day are we on this map thing here? We're on 6,
We
right?
have just left Elam, and
Right.
we are moving now. We have just moved to the wilderness of Sin. Now, I
Wait,
did
really?
want to say something that I missed. I think because there was
But there's a
the,
spot by the Red Sea. We're
there's a
not
day
there.
that shall not be named. There's a day that must not be named.
Okay.
But I think we didn't do a show, perhaps, and that might have been on Marah.
Well,
And
I
I
thought
did
you
want to.
said we don't move them on that day.
Oh, you're right. I was just trying to needle you, but it redounded back to me because you're right. We didn't move it that day anyway.
Yeah,
But
so I'm
I did
pretty
want to
sure
say
we're on
something
number
about
6 here.
Marah. So Marah means bitterness because after the crossing of the Red Sea, Israel, I think it was 3 days journey. I'm not sure, but the first place they come to is Marah, and the waters there were bitter, and the people grumbled and complained. Now, that's super important because of divine providence setting things up that way that we can learn. As Apostle Paul said, all these things are done for our instruction. Right after the Red Sea, which was a triumphal, although terrifying moment, and I don't know if you know it, but if you've ever done a Passover Seder, there's a point at the Passover Seder where you drop 10 drops of wine on your plate for the 10 plagues.
Hmm.
And it's supposed to be a very solemn time because you're mourning the destruction that came on Egypt. See, unlike some groups, when their enemy is destroyed, the way that the rabbis teach is that Israel is to mourn and to be sad, not to go out into the streets and celebrate the death of your opponent, that it's a terrible thing that had to happen. So it's a very solemn moment. And then there's also a midrash that talks about the angels when Israel was rejoicing on the other side of the sea. There, Deborah, excuse me, um,
I,
Miriam,
I
Moses'
hate to interrupt you, Mr. Craig. I have a
yeah,
guy who's trying to remotely take over my PC right now, so I'm gonna have to take care of that. I don't know when I'll be back.
okay. So
That's
we're
why I keep dropping out.
all right. So are you just going to leave now?
I think so. I'm gonna try to figure this out because
And will
I
this
don't want
stream
to.
be able to continue though?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just continue on with the thing.
Yeah, it keeps trying to open up my PayPal and stuff. So I'm gonna...
Wow. Miriam celebrates, brings out the timbrel. They dance on the other side of the sea and sing that song. I will sing unto the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously, horse and the rider thrown into the sea. Um, Pharaoh's chariots and horses cast into the sea. And there's a midrash from the Jewish literature that says that the angels began to rejoice too, and God stopped them because he said that it's appropriate that Israel rejoices because they're rejoicing over their freedom. That's permissible. But the angels were not set free. So it's not permissible or appropriate to rejoice at the destruction of all these children of God, being the Egyptians. Just to have an awareness of that, like in the Jewish mind, and when I say the Jewish mind, I don't mean your average Israeli right now or Woody Allen or something. I'm talking about in the rabbinic Jewish mind, the Jews who follow Torah, that the ethic is that we do not rejoice over the downfall of our enemies. We rejoice in our salvation and we mourn the downfall of these enemies. It's a very great tragedy that we're stuck in a world where in order to do good, that some people have to suffer these tragedies and terrors as happened to the Egyptians, even though they were pursuing Israel and et cetera, et cetera. But the point I'm trying to get at is about Marah, that after that great deliverance, the first thing that happens to Israel is they come to the waters of Marah and they're bitter. Marah is the same Hebrew root as maror at the Passover Seder, where you eat the bitter herbs. It's bitterness. And they come to this water and it's bitter. Now, the important thing to think about is that put yourself in the mindset of those people. They've just had a great deliverance. They've seen the Red Sea split. Faith, trust in God is at an all-time high. You've just seen the waters split, and Pharaoh's army, and you're delivered. But the problem is you have to be realistic and realize how your human nature is. That's one of the important benefits of fasting. They had been on this journey. They're celebrating. They've seen the great works of God, and then but they've been 3 days, I think, on a journey. So now they're thirsty. They're in the desert and they're thirsty. And they see up ahead of them this water. They begin to rejoice. There's excitement. Oh, God is doing it again. He's helping us. Here's the water. And then they get to the water and it's bitter. They can't drink it. What that's called, dear friends, is something that you may be familiar with in your life. It's called disappointment. Disappointment. That's when God's divine providence allows you to think that's the thing you've got to realize about that city, Marah, that we just left on this map that Joe can't put up because someone's trying to break into his computer. Just after the high excitement comes this bitter disappointment. And it's not just that the waters are bitter, it's the disappointment part that's the real bitterness, in my opinion. It's the teaching I'm handing over. And it's clear if you just think about and put yourself in the mindset. It doesn't say it explicitly in scripture, but it does say 3 days journey in the desert. Then they see water and the water's bitter. So you just have to picture the movie in your mind. They see it at a distance. They're excited. God's coming to help us again. The Lord is on our side to fight for us. And then you get to the water and it's bitter. I, of course, as everyone has had times when God made it look like something good was going to happen. You're like, ooh, everything's coming together. This is great. God's on my side. And then it all turns bitter. That's the first thing that happens after the great deliverance. So just keep that in mind. The way the story rolls, there's a certain flow of life. And by divine providence and the Holy Spirit, these things happen to Israel, as Paul said, for our instruction, that you might realize how things work and not be shocked, taken aback, confused. In the world you will have tribulation, says Jesus, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. The way he overcame it. The way he overcame it was through a bitter cross. And I'm not a huge fan of that, but looks like that's what we got. Man, Joe's still not back. It's so much better when my man Joe's here with me. So guys, we're on day 2 of my water fast and I can feel it. But one great benefit of water fasting is sleep. As your body begins to transition to ATP energy and to take care of many of the toxins in your body, your sleep just becomes comatose, deep sleep, and it's just beautiful and great. And of course, your guts feel better, everything feels better, except for certain points where things are being taken care of. But I just say this, keep you guys updated on fasting. Most people in America do not fast, and health will show that. I don't want to get on a big talk about fasting. Okay, so first week of Lent, and we're heading into Article 6, and we're very quickly ending question 10, which will mean a big decade party. We will do some live streams from the decade party. We're going to have bourbon. We're going to have, I will break my fast for this decade party. There's a lot of fast breaking that's been so far in this Lent, and you know what? I'm totally fine with it. This fasting has been so difficult that I'm completely fine with feast days coming in the midst of the fast days. And I am going to break this fast for the decade party. See you guys there. Make sure you show up. You know where. Dumb Oxes Club. You know where we're going to meet. See if I can get some pizzas in there or something. Bourbons. We'll figure something out. We'll have a nice little get together. Plus, we get to hang out. It's been a little while. It's been a little minute. Steve, make sure you come. Asian, make sure you come. Elias, I know you're going to be there. Come on, guys. All right, let's do page 87 of the Daily Summa. The eternity of God is what we're talking about. We're on Article 6, whether there is only one ave eternity. But first, let's just do some house cleaning and get to the top of this page, which is still Article 5. Something which, being supposed is of opposite, is not subject to the divine power, whereas when we say he will be, we do not as yet suppose anything. Hence, since the existence and non-existence of an angel considered absolutely is subject to the divine power, God can make the existence of an angel not future. But he cannot cause him not to be while he is, or not to have been after he has been. Objection 3. What was that? Wait, was that? Yeah, that's objection 3. What was he saying? Further, if there is not before and after an ave eternity, it follows. Did I just flip that page? Oh no. I did it again, guys. I did it again. Ooh, Joe would be cracking up at me. I did the whole flip the page, put my card there because I'm studying it and leave the card there trick. I think we're on Article 5 at the top of page 85 because this is one page, Tuesday, Wednesday, and that would be Thursday. Is that correct? Oh, guys. Thursday. No, the last day is the 13th. So that would be 11th, 12th, 13th. Yeah, that's right. We are on page 85. Let's go to the top of page 85. Sorry, folks. Things actually change, but also things changeable. Hence, it is not only measures it not only measures movement, but it also measures repose, which belongs to whatever is naturally movable, but is not actually in motion. There's going to be a lot of talk here about the difference between time and eternity. Eternity has to, in the eternity, like absolute eternity is the term. Absolute eternity is proper only to that which is commonly referred to as God and is highly connected to his immutability. God is immutable, he does not change because there's no potency in God. If there was potency in God, there would have to be something to move that potency other than God. So you would need another God to start that potency. So Aristotle and Aquinas reason back to, remember, it's not divine revelation. It's not because it says it in the Bible. Aristotle didn't have the Bible. It was before Jesus, before all of that. Aristotle, and apart from it in Greece, Aristotle is reasoning back from the things we view in nature, that if there's motion and cause and effect, there must be some unmovable mover. Very simplistic way to put it, but this isn't the point of today's teaching, so we're just doing a quick review. the point is, everything moves from potency into act. And there has to be something, there always is something that moves it from potency to act. These guitar strings are in potency to be a song. They don't just start playing a song by themselves. Something has to move it. And that something is me right now, the efficient cause. That's just how nature works. That things in potency do not go into act by themselves. Something must move them into act. So there can be no potency in whatever started all of this. There has to be something that's pure act. And pure act does not change, because change has to do with potency moving into act. Therefore, it's immutable. And if it's immutable, there's no change, then that also stands to follow that its eternity is unchanging. What is the word we're learning? Whether eternity differs from time. Eternity belongs to God alone. Whether God is eternal. Yeah. So his immutableness is the unchangingness in the eternal nature of time, in that there is nothing that is eternal absolutely except for him. Then Thomas begins to describe other types of eternity, like when God creates a being and then it keeps living forever. That's relative eternity. Just to get your head in the game. Now he's going to bring up this whole new concept at the top of 85, Article 5, the difference between aeviternity and time. We heard about aeviternity, and aeviternity is this kind of mid place between absolute eternity in God and our existence in space-time. Aeviternity is like the kind of eternity that angels exist in, and that the blessed will exist in, whoever achieve this state of union with God for all eternity. Their type of eternity will be aeviternity. Now remember, this isn't something in Scripture. This is something that logically follows. There's so much of Thomas and so much of theology that's a matter of logically following. Can it be argued? Sure. Can we find nuances in it and see what this means, and that it wasn't quite what we thought, and oh, that adjusts something else in theology? Sure. That's why Thomas spent so much time at the beginning talking about theology being a science, that we have certain principles that are unshakable, certain universal constants, let's call it, a universal constant of theology. Jesus is the Son of God, co-eternal with the Father, fully God, fully man, born of a virgin. These kind of things are indisputable. But other things are being revealed. That's why I gave the metaphor of the whale being pulled out of the ocean and up onto the shore, and the tribe takes it and starts cutting it to pieces, consuming some of it, using some of the bones for structures to live in, this kind of thing. So this divine revelation that's flopped up on the shore of space-time, being the revelation of Abraham, the revelation on Mount Sinai, which we're about to celebrate and are celebrating now in Lent, this journey through the desert with Israel, that revelation, the revelation of Jesus, the Son of God, entering into the world in the Virgin's womb, the revelation of the church as he gave the keys to St. Peter, a teaching authority that would exist throughout time until his return, and he takes the seat of Moses over, returns and sits upon the seat of Moses. All these things are space-time realities, and they're universal constants. But other things like aeviternity, we're still discussing and coming to understand as part of this big puzzle and revelation, as God exquisitely invites us and calls us back to himself in this mystery that we're involved in. You have to see that this is all part of a story ending in a wedding. And this is all the gentle call of the bridegroom, coaxing you, bringing you, wooing you back to himself slowly by stages. As it says in Exodus, Israel went through the desert in stages. This is all part of that process. And the Summa is just as Father James Brent said, a long and extended meditation on the presence of the bridegroom in our lives, wooing us back to himself. So let's go and do a little theology, shall we? Aeviternity, logically would follow from the difference between the absolute eternity, that is God, who is completely immutable with no potency, and then our space-time reality, which is complete potency and act. Thomas is saying that there must be some kind of middle state, which is not absolute eternity because only God is immutable. And it's not space-time like us, because these beings, angels and the blessed in heaven, will live for eternity, and they're living some kind of different life than we are on some different level. So we're going to try to explain and reason what that must be like, or at least some things about it. Even if we can't tell exactly what it is, we can talk about it, around it, like apophatic theology. So we're going to just call it aeviternity, this middle place. All right, here we go with objections. It seems that aeviternity is the same as time, for Augustine says that God moves the spiritual through time. But aeviternity is said to be the measure of spiritual substance. Therefore, time is the same as aeviternity. We'll get back to it when we get to the answer. Should we just zip through these since we're going to be hitting the object? Yeah, we're going to hit the answer anyway. So I'll just read the objections. Next up is Ralph. Objection 2. Further, it is essential to time to have before and after, but it is essential to eternity to be simultaneously whole, as was shown in the first article. Now, aeviternity is not eternity, for it is written that eternal wisdom is before age. Therefore, it is not simultaneously whole, but has before and after, and thus it's the same as time. Ralph is just trying to say it's the same as time, bro. Why do we even need to make this other distinction of aeviternity? Make up this whole thing. It's unnecessary, is what Ralph is saying. Further, objection 3 comes Shimon. Further, if there is no before and after in aeviternity, it follows that in aeviternity things there is no. It follows that in aeviternal things there is no difference between being, having been, and going to be. Since then it is impossible for aeviternal things not to have been, it follows that it is impossible for them not to be in the future, which is false, since God can reduce them to nothing. God can blink things out of existence if he chooses to. Objection 4, Reuben. Further, since the duration of aeviternal things is infinite as to subsequent duration, if aeviternity is simultaneously whole, it follows that some creature is actually infinite, which is impossible. Therefore, aeviternity does not differ from time. It's impossible for a creature to be absolutely eternal, because absolute eternity, because that would imply immutability, and there's only one immutable thing, which is God, as was shown by the nature of potency and act. We call God immutable because there is no potency within him, as was explained before. On the contrary, Boethius says, who commandeth time to be separate from aeviternity? Okay, that's an argument from authority. Now let's listen to Thomas's answer. Aeviternity differs from time and from eternity as the mean between them both. That's what I said before. Ooh, the sun's coming up. I must be getting darker on the screen. Because of this time change, you get to see more before the darkness sets in. That's also a nice lesson. The darkness sets in on me, but that's because it becomes lighter outside. How light and shadow works. It's true of the spiritual world also. The difference is explained by some to consist in the fact that eternity has neither beginning nor end. Aeviternity has a beginning but no end, and time both beginning and end. Thomas is saying some people say that the difference between absolute eternity in God and aeviternity, this middle ground in space-time, regular space-time, is that absolute eternity has no beginning or end. That's God. Aeviternity has a beginning but no end, and space-time has a beginning and an end. That sounds really neat, but usually when something's super simplistic, it's super not fully correct. But it is a neat little compartment to put it in. Okay, those are 3 differences, but Thomas is going to come and muck up the works by getting it more precise because he's a philosopher. This difference, however, is but an accidental one, as shown above in the preceding article, because even if aeviternal things had always been and would always be, as some think even that they might sometimes fail to be, which is impossible to God to allow, even granted this, aeviternity would still be distinguished from eternity and from time. He's saying the same thing. He's about to say the same thing that he said about the heavenly bodies, that some thought that they have always existed, but they still are not absolute eternal, because absolute eternal is no potency, no potential, only act. And even if the universe had always existed, which we now know it hasn't with the Big Bang, but they didn't know that back then, Thomas is saying even if the universe had always existed, there's still movement. It's still a planet going from here to here. Even if it has always existed. So Thomas is saying the same thing about Ave eternity, that even if it's always, you have some creatures that, like, let's say the angels have always existed, they're still living a different kind of life than God, who's wholly other and incomprehensible and lives in complete act with no potency. And they're living a different life than we are, which is complete space-time. We're just going to call that, whatever that is, we're going to call it Ave eternity. But he's saying even if they had always existed, it's still different than absolute eternity and space-time. Others assign the difference between these three to consist in the fact that eternity has no before and after, but that time has both, together with innovation and veteration. Innovation, things innovate, become different. Veteration, things grow old and pass away. And that Ave eternity has before and after without innovation and veteration. This theory, however, involves a contradiction, which manifestly appears if innovation and veteration be referred to the measure itself. For since before and after of duration cannot exist together, if Ave eternity has before and after, it must follow that with the receding of the first part of Ave eternity, the after part of Ave eternity must newly appear. And thus, innovation would occur in Ave eternity itself, as it does in time. And if they be referred to things measured, even when an incongruity would follow, even then an incongruity would follow. If they be referred to things measured, we talked about measure before, magnitude, multitude. For a thing which exists in time grows old and old with time because it has changeable existence. And from the changeableness of a thing measured, there follows before and after in the measure, as is clear from the physics. Therefore, the fact that an aveternal thing is neither inveterate nor subject to innovation comes from its changelessness. Saying that an angel, let's just use angels, it's easiest. An angel does not change or grow old and pass away, even though that it has changelessness, and consequently its measure does not contain before and after. So he's saying it can't just be that the Ave eternity thing is about not growing older or not changing from place to place, because that's not true of the angels either. So he's saying, we say then that since eternity is the measure of a permanent being, insofar as everything recedes from permanence of being, it recedes from eternity. Recedes from permanence of being. Permanence of being is pure act, that which is commonly referred to God. Whatever recedes further from pure act, from its first cause, from the permanence of being, it recedes from eternity, because God is the only one that is absolute, eternal, immutable. I know it's hard to follow sometimes, but it's just saying the further you get from God, things start changing. And it changes more and more the further things get away from him under the aspect of his eternal nature. You can still draw close to him in another aspect of nature, which is our heart. And that's the whole point of this world and what God's doing. But he's saying in the aspect of space-time and eternity, there are gradations as you move further away from absolute eternity, which is that which is commonly referred to as God. Now, some things recede from permanence of being, so that their being is subject to change or consists in change, and these things are measured by time, as are all movements, and also the being of all things corruptible. But others recede from permanence of being, for as much as their being neither consists in change nor is subject to change. Nevertheless, they have change annexed to them, either actually or potentially. This appears in heavenly bodies, the substantial being of which is unchangeable, and yet with the unchangeable being, they have changeableness of place. He's going back to this whole thing about celestial bodies, meaning the stars and the heavens that you see, Remember, there was an argument back then whether they were eternal. Now we know they're not from the Big Bang, but still, when he wrote this, there was an argument. And Thomas is using an analogy with the heavenly bodies that even though let's say they always existed, they still have a movableness of place. And he's going to say that these creatures, the angels or the blessed in heaven, even though that they have now eternal life and are going to live forever, and even though they are entering into a permanent state, still something within that state is changing. And also God could blink them out of existence, so they're not completely, absolutely eternal like he is. But also disregard that. There is something in them that is a different state or a different way of relating to even the things of this earth. Just like we talked about the angel Gabriel coming to Mary. Gabriel is in this aveternal state, but when he interacts with Mary, he's interacting with space-time. And that just is not true of ultimate, absolute eternity. God is in all places at once. He is present to the incarnation. He is present to the resurrection. He is present to Enoch and Elijah in a way that we just can't understand. God is fully act with no potential potency. The same applies to the angels, who have an unchangeable beginning as regards their nature, with changeableness as regards choice. Moreover, they have changeableness of intelligence, of affections, and of places in their own degree. Places not like planets that move to different places, but places to their own degree, the way in which they interact, let's say, with Earth, or perhaps even interact with each other. They're in a different so-called place. They may be in a place of great joy around the throne of God, and then they may be in a place in their heart and consciousness of interacting with Saint Michael, the archangel, or they may be in a place of using that kind of intelligence change. But that is just not true with God. And for us, that's not true because we're moving through space-time with actual matter and nature and physical things. So aveternity is this thing we call the difference, the life of the angels and the life of the blessed. Therefore, these are measured by eternity, which is a mean between eternity and time. But the being that is measured by eternity is not changeable, nor is it annexed to change. In this way, time has before and after. Eternity in itself has no before and after, which can, however, be annexed to it, while eternity has neither before nor after, nor is it compatible with such at all. Annexed to it is an interesting way to put it. Through different interactions, like I said, like with the Blessed Virgin, meeting with her, you have change annexed to it. Before and after, annexed to it. Before, Mary didn't know the angel was coming. Then the angel's with her. She gives her fiat. Then the angel leaves. That's a way of saying motion, leaving, but it's not physical motion. That's why he's bringing up a different word. They're not just making stuff up for fun. It's saying whatever this state is, we're just going to call it eternity. It's between absolute eternity, which is God alone, and the way we work in this world, which is complete motion and before and after. There's something that's in the middle. Intellectual beings. All right, let's reply to objection 1. He's going after Larry. Spiritual creatures, as regards successive affections and intelligences, are measured by time. Hence, also Augustine says that to be moved through time is to be moved by affections. But as regards their nature, they are measured by eternity, whereas as regards the vision of glory, they have a share of eternity. So the angels and the blessed in heaven have this eternal vision of God in their heart, but they're also experiencing still this liminal difference of things in their intellect being different at different movements. You'll hear some people who've died and gone to heaven talk about this and say, it's impossible to explain, but I knew I was in eternity, that everything would change. I was experiencing the eternity of God, and yet things were happening. They're still like seeing things happen, but they're also in eternity. It's what Thomas is trying to describe in eternity. Reply to objection 2. Eternity is simultaneously whole, yet it is not eternity, because before and after are compatible with it. It's talking about absolute eternity. It's not God's eternity. Reply to objection 3. In the very being of an angel considered absolutely, there is no difference of past and future, but only as regards accidental change. The angel's nature doesn't change. We do grow. We go from childhood to young adulthood to old age to death. We do change like that. Angels, no, they don't have that. But they do have some experience of past and future, but only as regards accidental change, not substantial. Their substance doesn't change from like a baby angel to a child angel to an adult angel. That's not the nature of the angel. They were created fully as these spiritual beings, but they're still experiencing something. They're not absolutely eternal like God because they're still experiencing past and future. Now, to say that an angel was or is or will be is to be taken in a different sense according to the acceptation of our intellect, which apprehends the angelic existence by comparison with different parts of time. But when we say that an angel is or was, we suppose something which being supposed, its opposite is not subject to the divine power. Whereas when we say he will be, we do not as yet suppose anything. Hence, since the existence and non-existence of an angel considered absolutely is subject to divine power, God can make the existence of an angel not future, but he cannot cause him not to be while he is, or not to have been after he has been. That's just the law of non-contradiction. Thomas is saying that God doesn't lie. If the thing has been, then it always has been. That's just the truth of the matter. Now, this one sentence jarred me a little bit, and it's very end of the page. Let's see how much time we got. Oh, we're still early. This is going to be a short class where I'm just going to wrap this up and finish it and get out of here. But let's go back and check out this sentence again. But when we say that an angel is or was, we suppose something, which being supposed, its opposite is not subject to the divine power. That's what I said. The law of non-contradiction. Supposing that it exists. If it exists, then what follows is that it will always have existed, even if God blinks it out of existence. He's just saying that we don't, that God is just and everything he does is true. So if something did exist, we don't ever say, no, it didn't. Now the question might arise, though, what about sin, Thomas? Because it says he's going to cast your sin into the sea of forgetfulness, so it doesn't exist anymore. What about that, Thomas? What say you? I would almost like to leave this question over till next time, but just think about it. There is an answer. If Thomas is saying that, if we're saying that God never lies, and if an angel did exist, even if he blinks it out of existence, we never say that it doesn't exist. It always must have existed. Then what about sin when it says that sin will be cast into the sea of forgetfulness? We'll see. I'll have to write this down to answer that question tomorrow. Maybe some of you smart people can write it in the comments. It has to do with the nature of being. Let's see, March 12th, we will answer that question. Sin and sea of forgetfulness. As per, so I don't lose what we're talking about, as per reply to objection 3 from Article 5. Reply to objection 3, Art 5. Was that exciting, folks, watching me write that down? Hey, everybody, guess what? We're done. Peace be with all of you. Remember, this is all straw. If you ever get confused, please listen with the heart. Contemplate the reality of what we're involved in here in this life, in all the beauty of God's design. And then we'll catch you tomorrow on the second to the what's that word? The second to the last page of Article 10, right before we have our big Article 10 decade party. Man, I want to remember that word before we go, but whatever. Bye, guys. Take it easy. Have a wonderful day, and peace be